Welcome back to another edition of Go Long Live. I am Barry Long the second. Don't forget the second. I am not the first. I am the second. We are live here on CoachellaValley.com. We are also on today'scalifornia.com. We are also live on today'scanada.com. We are all over Twitter. So shout out to everybody who's been watching the show, who's been subscribing, who's been liking. I'm still a little under the weather. Been battling. I ain't got COVID. I don't have COVID, y'all. But yeah, I have something's going on with my voice or whatever. Just been a little under the weather, but I am fully vaccinated. But I'll be fine. The show must go on, as they say in show business. So today we have got to talk about the leading news that is dominating all of the sports world, and that is John Gruden has just been fired or has resigned as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders after some terrible emails have resurfaced for over the course of 7 years. We'll talk about that here shortly. We'll also talk about that thriller that we saw last night, Monday Night Football game. My Ravens were down 25-9, ended up with a miraculous comeback and a victory at the end. We'll talk about that. But we got Mo Murphy. Mo Murphy's on. When we got Mo Murphy in the building, we definitely got to talk some college football and just see what he thinks about his random views on sports stories, because he's a very interesting dude. He is the vice president of the Off the Ball Network. Now, real quick, just letting you all know that you can comment on the show. We want you to comment on Facebook if you're watching. Just all you got to do is just comment on Facebook, and we will pop them up live on the screen. We got my man Sage is going to be joining us here shortly as well. And make sure you go and like the pages. Please go and like the Today's California page, the today's Canada page, and the Coachella Valley page. Without any further ado, let me bring in my main man, Mo Murphy. He is the vice president of the Off the Ball Network. Mo, what's going on, boss?
Hey, what's going on, bro? Glad to be back. Glad to talk some football. A lot of things have happened over the past weekend, bro. It's been an eventful weekend, at least in the football world.
Absolutely, it has. And let's start with some college football because, we love to pick your brain about college football. And we saw some crazy stuff happen this weekend. Everybody thought Alabama was going to be the clear-cut number one. They are no longer number one. They lost to Texas A&M, and Jimbo Fisher becomes the first ever assistant under Nick Saban to defeat him from a different college. Tell us your thoughts on the Alabama game, and do they have a chance to bounce back? And because they still have to face Georgia, so do they have a chance to make it to the college playoff, or are they fighting for their lives at this point?
Of course they have a chance. Like, if they win out and win the SEC championship, they're in there. A one-loss SEC champ is getting in there. Now, granted, their biggest obstacle left on their schedule that you would be able to physically call out and say their toughest game would be, as long as Georgia continues on the pace they're on, the battle in the SEC championship. But, Bama also has LSU. I know they're not the greatest team, but still, we know what that rivalry is. Bama still has a couple matchups. Mississippi State. And I'm not saying that Bama can lose those games, but just the same way we fell asleep on Bama, possibly, nobody thought that Bama was going to lose to Texas A&M. So that same mindset you got to have now with Mississippi State and with LSU all the way up into the SEC championship. Nothing's guaranteed at this point. Bama is not head and shoulders above everybody like we thought. They lost to a 2-loss Texas A&M team. My only argument with that is
an unranked team.
Unranked 2-loss Texas A&M team. I give them credit for one. They lost to Arkansas. Arkansas is a good team who had just went down in a thriller, but they just went down with their second loss. But, Arkansas has, I guess, quality losses. But they lost to a 2-loss team in Texas A&M. And all I'm saying is, when we talk about SEC football, the Big Ten is doing this year what SEC is praised for every year. They have to go through a gauntlet. They got 5 teams in the top 10, and it's not getting acknowledged. Where the SEC has Bama, they got Georgia, and then who else? Like, who else do they really have inside of the top 10? Yeah, they had the number 1 and number 2 teams, but the SEC is not as strong as normal. But I don't think this is a trend. I don't think the SEC is trending downwards. I'm just saying they're not as dominant as we're used to seeing.
Absolutely. Now Georgia, is in the SEC. They just now bounced up to number 1. They look like they got the best defense in the country right now. How do you think that they fare? Because these 2 teams are going to have to meet head on, Georgia and Alabama. How do you think that? Do you think Georgia can hold on to that number 1 spot?
I mean, I would have to say yes. Like, Georgia hasn't really shown me. I mean, they got it. Their schedule has turned to be a lot tougher than people think. Like, they're about to play Kentucky, and Kentucky's an undefeated SEC team. Georgia is looking to win their fourth top 20. They're looking to get their fourth top 20 victory this week playing Kentucky. Like, that is, I think Kentucky has outdone themselves, but Georgia can't sleep on Kentucky. Like, that's just pure point blank. Like, I'm not calling an upset, but you can't sleep on Kentucky. I feel like Florida did. LSU never loses to Kentucky, especially like Florida doesn't lose to Kentucky. They hadn't lost in Kentucky in like years. I think almost like 18 years. But Kentucky had beat Florida like twice in the past 4 years, but they were both at home. But you can't fall asleep on Kentucky. But I will say, if Georgia gets through Kentucky and gets through it convincingly, they have to be the favorite for the SEC championship. I mean, because they wouldn't have another game on their schedule where you're like, I could see them getting upsets happen. But I mean, the way Georgia is played, I don't see them getting upset. But I also don't think if Kentucky was to beat Georgia, it would be as big of an upset as everybody is going to make it out to be if Kentucky ends up winning this game.
Absolutely. And shout out to Tad and Armbruster, who said, who you're right on cue. He says Kentucky, duh. So, yeah, I mean, the SEC is not as strong as it was looking. But we also have a few undefeated teams that are, I don't know if people are convinced completely, but I mean, I really do like Iowa. We saw what they were able to do this week against Penn State, even though Penn State didn't have their starting quarterback. Tell me how you felt about that game.
I'm still not convinced on Iowa. I'm really not. Because that's a game I really feel like Penn State was not dominating and winning by 30, but they were dominating that game. There were a lot of turnovers made from both quarterbacks, but at the end of the day, Penn State was still up 14-3 at one point. Sean Clifford goes down and the whole game changes. So that's how Iowa won. I mean, like you said, their quarterback goes down. That's how Iowa wins the game. I'm not saying who's to say it doesn't change, but I think we all believe, anybody who actually watched that game, I think you do believe Penn State at least holds on and wins that game. I'm not convinced. I mean, I think both teams are really good, though. Like, it's not, but I don't think Iowa is a championship team. I also don't think Penn State is a championship team. When I look at how they fare, we'll see, because we're seeing Ohio State start to come into his own, and they're starting to look like the team that typically dominates the Big Ten. So Penn State is going to have an opportunity to go into the shoe and prove that they belong with the big dogs and beating Ohio State. Ooh. I know Ohio State has a loss and lost to Oregon early, and they've been rolling ever since. We could talk about the type of competition, but Rutgers almost upset a Michigan team who is still currently undefeated. Rutgers hung in there with a Michigan State team. Like, we could say these teams, Maryland, you know, yeah, they were undefeated, had got blown out by Iowa, but we could say these teams aren't that great. But if they were in the SEC and this was Bama had struggled with a 3-2 Texas A&M instead of losing the game, you give them credit because it's an SEC battle. So I think Ohio State is starting to come into his own. So Penn State will definitely be able to test their worth, and so will Iowa if the projection happens, or Michigan. You know, Ohio State has a gauntlet to get through with Penn State, Michigan, and possibly Iowa in the Big Ten championship. But I think all of those teams, with having to play each other, will actually be able to prove their worth. I'm just not sold on Iowa yet because I don't feel like they win that game if Sean Clifford doesn't go down.
Absolutely. This is Mo Murphy. He is the vice president of the Off the Ball Network. He is joining us live. We're talking college football right now. Real quick, you can comment on the side. We got Mai Chappelle. She is shout out to her. She is one of my neighborhood moms. She says, "Good to see my neighbor kids successful on the web. Proud of you, Barry." Thank you. We appreciate you. So yeah, you're right, man. Ohio State, that loss does kind of look better because it's in the top 10. So, you know, it's not like they lost to an unranked team. But, you know, a lot of teams there's a couple teams up in Michigan, up in the state of Michigan, that are undefeated. And a lot of people are like, who have they played? So, you know, and that's the reason why they're not up higher than in the rankings than they are. But that's Michigan and Michigan State. Now, out of which one of these teams are you a believer in, thinking that they can run the gauntlet and go undefeated?
Out of the Big Ten teams?
Well, out of those two teams, Michigan and Michigan State.
Oh,
let's keep it there.
I had to say Michigan State. First off, my hatred for Michigan. No, it's not that I don't believe in Michigan. It's I've seen their brand of football, and that they don't have enough home run hitters for me in today's college football. Like, they're winning the games they're supposed to win. That's what good teams do. But when you prove how good you are, it's when you're going to play these great teams. Michigan has a gauntlet. They have to play Michigan State. They have to play Ohio State. I think they skip Penn State this year. But they have to play Ohio State. They have to play Michigan State. So they'll be able to prove otherwise. But if I was to say right now, based on what I've seen from both teams, and because I look at Michigan State, their recipe is almost the same, except the fact that Kenneth Walker is a Heisman candidate and could be a running back who wins the Heisman this year over there at Michigan State, where I think Michigan does it real well, but they've struggled in games. It's not like they've had a lot of convincing victories where you're like, that's a top 4 team in the country. You've watched Ohio State, even with a loss, you feel like they were a top 4 team in the country. That's just my personal opinion. Yes, I'm Ohio State biased, but even like you've watched Michigan State and been more impressed with Michigan State than you have Michigan. But that's just me. Like, I've been more impressed with Michigan State than Michigan, I think. And with having Kenneth Walker who could win the Heisman, when you have a Heisman candidate, you're going to look like the better team in the first place anyway.
Absolutely. He is Mo Murphy. He joins us he is the vice president of the Alto Ball Network. Sage, how you doing today, man?
Hey, how's it going, Barry? The second, not the first, and not the third. And how's it going, Mo?
What's going on, bro?
Absolutely. We are Go Long Live, and this is Today's California. We are live on Coachella Valley. We are also live on Today's Canada. So real quickly, man, I just want to pick your brain about your Cowboys, because the Cowboys are looking really good right now, man. And I know it was the Giants, and the Giants haven't really been, considered world beaters, and they're dealing with a ton of injuries, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But how do you feel about your man Trayvon Diggs? Another game, another pick. Just the defense is looking good. Is this the best team in the NFC in your opinion?
Nah, I'm not ready to go there yet. Nah. The Bucks, you still have to respect the Super Bowl champs. The Bucks they're 4-1, and we lost in a head-to-head matchup. Green Bay, even in a sloppy win, what Green Bay has done this year so far is they have won in every fashion. They've dominated the game. They've won in close games, and when all things could go wrong, they still were able to pull out victories, as we saw on Sunday when they played the Bengals. So I'm not ready to say – I'm ready to say they're up there and they're ready to compete. But, I mean, you got Arizona, you got Tampa, you got Green Bay. Like, it's just – you got the Rams. It's disrespectful to just say that, yes, definitively Dallas is the best team in the NFC. I could make a case on why I would feel that way, but I still have to look at Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I have to look at the former Super Bowl champs and Tom Brady and the Bucks. Got to look at the Rams, and the Cardinals are undefeated. How can I say a team who has a loss is better than a team who's undefeated and has played quality competition, has beat the Rams, have beat they beat the 49ers. They've done it in all fashions, and they haven't lost a game. They have the MVP candidate also. And when it comes to Trayvon Diggs, I mean, like you said, another game, another interception. Eventually, his streak is going to end.
I don't know if it will.
to predict that a guy gets an interception in 16 games, and since he's had a game with 2, we would be calling at least 17 interceptions on the season. Wow. I'm not going to go that far and say that. Yeah. But he's been absolutely amazing. And then Michael Parsons, like the addition, when you look at the young guys on that defense, the past 2 to 3 years, we've hit on every draft pick. Essentially, Absolutely. We've hit on every draft pick. We kept Jordan Lewis around. Kelvin Joseph has come back. Jabril Cox this year as a rookie came in, got some shine the other day, looked good. And like I said, Trayvon Diggs obviously being in the second year. And then Michael Parsons, I think he's been the key, because if there's been one name outside of Trayvon Diggs that's mentioned in sacks, tackle for losses, and just flying around the field, it's Michael Parsons. And any defense could use him, because some of the top tier defenses, when the Raiders had Khalil Mack, and now that the Bears have Khalil Mack, like the Von Millers, I think Michael Parsons is going to have that impact. Is going to be that type of player where he's that linebacker, edge rusher, drop a back in coverage, also could come off the edge. And that's Khalil Mack and Von Miller. And those are game-changing guys that when their careers are all said and done, because they've maximized it for the most part, they're first ballot Hall of Famers. Like Khalil Mack's going to the Hall of Fame. Von Miller's going to the Hall of Fame. I think Michael Parsons could have that same type of career.
Yeah, and see, and with Diggs, I feel like, the reason why he keeps getting this interception streak going is because, like, early on when Darrelle Revis was starting to become a household name, before everyone knew who he was, he started getting a lot of interceptions. And quarterbacks consistently, week in and week out, tried to go after him. They tried to go at him and tried to prove that he wasn't as good as he is. And I think that's what we're seeing right now from Trayvon Diggs. And then traditionally, as it always happens in the NFL, once a cornerback gets paid and everybody knows that you're out there on the island, then there are interceptions and their numbers go down because quarterbacks aren't targeting their side as much. So we'll see. We'll see that decline once.
I'm glad somebody said that, I'm just glad somebody acknowledged that everybody thinks when guys' interception numbers go down, they're not the same corner. What it is they didn't establish their dominance, and now you know not to throw their way. And we saw that Darrelle Revis when he went to Tampa. Everybody said he didn't earn his money because I think one year he had 3 interceptions, but he also had, as a corner, the lowest QBR when thrown his way. And he finished with 3 interceptions that year. He was the highest paid corner, but he literally was on and he took away a whole side of the field. So that I'm glad you acknowledge that simple fact that we don't expect corners to lead the league in interceptions. Nobody expects Jalen Ramsey to lead the league in interceptions when we know quarterbacks are looking and game planning on how can we win without even throwing that direction.
Absolutely. He is Mo Murphy, Vice President of the Off the Ball Network, and he joins us live. Now, we saw one of the craziest stories, that's happened recently in the NFL. We saw, John Gruden yesterday. First of all, on Friday, there was a report from the Wall Street Journal that an email surfaced where he was targeting and talking about DeMaurice Smith, who is the president of the Players Association. He's a lawyer and he's a black man, to be honest. And he said some stuff about, how he was, talking about his lips were as big as Michelin tires, which a lot of people took, with racial undertones, the big lips or whatever. Then it surfaced over this weekend that the New York Times uncovered over 600,000 emails, I believe, but during some kind of investigation on the Washington football team, and John Gruden was a part of a lot of those. And he was caught saying some misogynistic things and some anti-gay slurs, which led to him being fired or led to him resigning from the Raiders. Now, a lot of people were disappointed in John Gruden. We saw a lot of players come to his defense. We saw some of his former players on TV, saying this is who this guy is. I personally liked John Gruden. I was a fan of his passion. I was definitely a fan of him when he was on Monday Night Football, thinking that he has a unique perspective on the game and a unique passion that the game needs. But when you saw some of the stuff, and I went out and read these emails, I read a couple of them, and he was talking directly about Michael Sams, who was the first player that was drafted that was gay in the NFL. Said some unfavorable things about him. And that he also has the only guy in the league right now who is gay and who's come out, and that's Carl Nassib, the only active NFL player on his roster. So just a touchy situation. But yeah, Mo Murphy, I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel about the whole John Gruden situation? And are you still a fan of his?
I mean, no, I can't be a fan of his. I wasn't the biggest fan of Gruden. It's not like I was a Gruden lover. But I lived in Tampa. I was there when he won inherited, Tony Dungy's team and was able to win that Super Bowl. So he has some legendary moments, but when you say things like that, like, here's the thing, you could be one thing to the public, but eventually who you are behind closed doors comes out, whether it's in an email or your personality finally shows and you can't wear the mask or whatever. Eventually you slip up if you're not who you are naturally. So John Gruden kind of showed us. My only issue that I have is I think it's bigger than John Gruden. And I think John Gruden is being the scapegoat right now because there's 2 names that have been mentioned, but multiple people and there's a bunch of unnamed people, but there's 2 names that have been mentioned, and it's John Gruden, who resigned, and then it's the former Washington football team general manager, who is no longer associated with the league. Bruce Allen. He's not a GM or anything like that. So we can do his name. Who cares what people think about him? He's gone and removed from the NFL. John Gruden. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, he's not tarnishing NFL's brand right now. You ain't got to sell the team. He's not an owner. And John Gruden resigns. Probably a prime thing that people wanted to see happen anyway. So I think he's the scapegoat because I think it's bigger. I think there's more names. I think more coaches, more league personnel that are tied to this because he sent these, but what was said back? Because it wasn't just conversations between him and Bruce Allen. It's conversations between him and multiple people. We see what he said, but what was responded back? Like, if you're not, hey, man, there's no place for that. Hey, man, I can't respect what you said, then you're wrong too. If you accepting those with no pushback, you ain't got to go tell on them. But if you accepting those emails and you're rolling with his behavior, you just as wrong. At the end of the day,
I would like to see who got CC'd on some of those emails.
And I would like to see the responses. And am I going to read 60,000 or 600, whatever email? No, I'm not. But I think he's the scapegoat because everybody else is unnamed. Bruce Allen and John Gruden were named. Everybody else is unnamed. You can't tell me everybody just unnamed just because they don't know who it is. They know exactly who it is, but could this be like a big time scandal that becomes eye popping and really does some damage to Roger Goodell and the rest of the NFL in the middle of what is turning out to be a great season? This is something I think a lot more comes out at the end of the season when it's all said and done, and this becomes an off-season issue. But right now, in the middle of a great season, this is already a bad look, and I think that's why we're going to start seeing a lot of unnamed sources or unnamed things coming up, because I think you could see a lot of damage to a lot of organizations and their hopes right now. And you don't want 5-6 coaches being fired for this, general managers having to, resign or step down. That'll ruin the NFL season as a whole and kind of invalidate anybody who ends up winning the championship based on some big-time scandal like this. So I just can't wait to see what comes of it, because it's not just John Gruden. Nobody can tell me through 600,000 emails John Gruden was the only one who said something that you had a problem with.
Yeah, and if we know one thing, that there are reporters and there are TMZ people and there are people that will dig and they will do all the reading, and we will certainly find out. Now, Sage, you're a Raiders fan, diehard Raiders fan your entire life. How do you feel about the situation, and what are the Raiders going to go do moving forward?
Well, they weren't going to keep Gruden. It's either he resigned or they were going to legally get the money back, and I don't think he wanted to be put through that. And I think even I kind of wish he did, because then we would for sure have to find out who those emails were. So I think that's where they kind of get off. It's more of a like, we're gonna get a lot of people off because Gruden resigned and he just didn't try and get the full $100 million of his contract because he resigned. So kind of disappointing, because I did want to see more into this, but obviously, Gruden is not gonna. There's no fighting this. There's no. I don't want to hear he grew from this. It's just like the Stephanie Small situation a month ago, where we found out she was saying the N-word about 7 years ago. Gruden, it's the same thing with Gruden. I don't want to hear he grew. It's been a long time. He grew as a person. He just got caught. How do you grow from something you probably, and he says up to 2018, some of these emails. Yeah. I mean,
and it's important that we point out that he was not working with the Raiders at that time. He was working with ESPN. But like we always see, especially with this cancel culture, people are going to they're going to do their digging. They're going to find out what you've done in the past, and it will come back to haunt you.
A very wise man once said, "Leave no stone unturned."
Absolutely. Yeah, just a very unfortunate situation for everyone involved. But yeah, John Gruden. One thing we don't have to do is we don't have to feel sorry for John Gruden. Okay, John Gruden. No. He made what? He made $40 million, 30 million plus from that.
He won a Super Bowl already.
Contract.
No one's feeling bad for the guy. No one's feeling bad there's a lot of hurt people, because a lot of people, that was his friend, that was their friend. He has a lot of family. That's all this family. He's got to address them for his actions. And some of them are going to be like, man, I just didn't get caught. And that's the real thing. Now, and I saw Keyshawn. I mean, and to Keyshawn's credit, he's always kept the same energy about John Gruden. I think some people are like, oh, he's just doing this, for publicity. I'm like, Keyshawn been saying the same things for a long time, and this almost validates what he's been saying for the longest time.
They had problems when he was in Tampa.
Yeah,
they didn't get along when he was in Tampa. Everybody, it's so long ago that people forget about that. They want to. Well, now that Keyshawn has a platform, he's speaking out. No, but you don't beat a dead you don't beat a dead horse. That was from years ago. Nobody holds grudges. People move on. But Keyshawn and John Gruden didn't get along back then. They hated each other back then, and everybody knew it. So it's it's not him just now speaking on the issue. They've been not got along. They've been, Keyshawn been felt some type of way about him. And now that a situation occurs, he's just speaking on, this has been him. But it's not my job to degrade his credit for the rest of my career. That's not what I base my career on, is speaking ill on John Gruden my whole life. So.
And absolutely. And so this is Mo Murphy. He is the vice president of Off the Ball Network, and he's joining us live. And we only got 5 more minutes. Hopefully you can stay. Can you stay with us for 5 more minutes, Mo?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's talk about this game last night, the Ravens versus the Indianapolis Colts. And it was a pretty dominating performance by the Colts in the first half and into the third quarter. And basically, they just ran all over them. They hit the long pass for the screen on them early in the game. The offensive line was just dominating the Ravens defensive line. And Lamar Jackson on the other side of the football couldn't get anything going. The running game couldn't get going. But over time, they started to get their footing, and they were down by 16 points with 12 minutes left. and somehow miraculously scored 2 touchdowns and scored 2-point conversions. And then at the end of the regulation, the Lions kicker Blankenship missed the field goal to send it in overtime. The Ravens win the coin toss, and the rest is history. He comes down the field and scores the game-winning pass to Marquise Brown. Now, we talked about Lamar Jackson on this show with you, Mo Murphy, and we talked about how he's going to have to progress in the passing game. Last night, he passed for 442 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, I might add, and he completed 86% of his passes. I mean, and he was from the pocket the entire night. There were very few rollouts. Yeah, he did miss a couple of those throws, but he only missed a couple. So how did you feel about Lamar Jackson's performance last night, especially passing the football? And do you think it's sustainable throughout at least this season or throughout the rest of his career?
I hate Lamar Jackson. And I don't really hate Lamar Jackson. I really love him. I really love Lamar Jackson. But the reason I say this is he must have heard me last night. Because through the first half, I was having a conversation, and I was basically bringing out my top 10 quarterbacks right now, and I left Lamar Jackson off the list. I very well did. And then he does this. Like, then he goes, it's like, okay, I'm hearing what you're talking, da-da-da. Like, I'm having a whole – and it's not – I love Lamar Jackson. I want the success. I just think, like me and Sage had said prior, a couple weeks ago, was that we need to continue to see the progression. Where he's at right now, we need him to be a little bit better. And boom, what does he do? He shows you, first off, he has it in him. With Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews has the biggest game. First time he scored this year, and it was 2 touchdowns. Hollywood Brown has a huge game. Rashad Bateman still hasn't come back yet. A type of receiver that we said Lamar Jackson needed to ultimately have success. He's about to come back. So the Ravens are about to get scary. Latavius Murray has filled in nice at running back, also with Tyson Williams, but it's the danger of Lamar Jackson. It's the athleticism of him, and it's the improvement. Not only does he improve in the offseason, it's the fact that you have a guy who improves week by week. Like, he learns and grows and gets better. He's not the same guy week 1 that he is in week 17 of every year, which is why Lamar Jackson had a performance like he did last night, because he gets better by the week, he gets better by the day, and he takes being great at football serious. You could tell that means something to him, is he wants to be great. He don't care about the money, or else he'd already have a contract. He don't care about the fame, because he out there in the streets hanging out with everybody in South Miami that he grew up with and being kids' role models. He don't care about none of that. He's great at football, and he wants to be the greatest person to ever play football. That's his goal. Whether it's obtainable or not is besides the point. You can't tell him that he will not have an opportunity to be the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. So that's what I love about Lamar Jackson. To see that last night, you have to be excited as a Ravens fan to know that he gets it done with his legs and arms. The man had 508 yards of offense between throwing the ball and running the ball. The Ravens had 526.
Consistent. That's what we need to see.
Yeah,
that's good. It's a great.
It is, but
we need it consistently. That's why we're not confident. And that's why you left him off your top 10, because we need it consistent with the progressions.
And one thing that he has not done is he's not protected the football in key moments. And they said a stat last night that said that he led the league in fumbles at the 1-yard line. And he's done it a few times. He did it last night. But the one thing as a Ravens fan that you can take away from every time he makes a mistake like that, he's so hard on himself. And when they go and they zoom in on the camera on him, and when he's on the sideline, he's mad at himself. And he's not yelling at any O-linemen because they're not blocking. He's not yelling at receivers or when they make a mistake, but he is definitely tough on himself. But yeah, with the running game, in shambles before the season, before we picked up all these random running backs, he knew that he was going to have to step up and make a lot of passes, and he did. So I'm
having
proud.
Dobbins really hurts, and that's where just him and that no Bateman for the longest time. It was just there's a lot of reasons for him not to progress. So Bateman
is going to be activated next week, they're saying. So we'll see. And Miles Boykin as well. So we'll see if adding those receivers can help him out. But we're just cautious. We got to be cautious.
Looked great last night.
Absolutely. All right. So real quick, we got a meme of the day, and I thought this one was just necessary. This is how the hell you get fired on your day off? That is a classic scene from the movie Friday. And John Gruden, that's a face to put on that body like that. That is awesome. But yeah, John Gruden, man, just a tough situation. We'll see how the Raiders progress. But Mo Murphy, thank you so much for joining us. Tell everybody how they can find you, man.
Yeah, you can find me at Upper Flames Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter, Instagram. And also make sure you go to offtheballnetwork.com for all your sports news entertainment. Got a bunch of great guys over there putting in a lot of work, podcasts, articles, betting tips, however you want to do it. You want to win some money. We got betting shows, everything else like that, betting tips with games of the week. So make sure you just go check that out. And make sure you tune in to my NBA preview on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Got to tune in for that.
All right, thanks, Mo. Appreciate you
Mo.
joining us, man.
Yep. All right, fellas.
All right, Sage, let them know how they can find you, man.
You can find me at Twitter at SageDup. And you can find me on Instagram at Sage_up. And then you can also find me on find me on Facebook at Sage Alvarez. All I do is a friend.
All right, and you can find me on Twitter at Radio Barry Long. And you can also find me
to my guy Craig, because he always mentions my bookcase. One of my favorite books. How to Win Friends.
That's a great book. That's a great book. Actually, I'm reading that as well.
Really good book.
So yeah, you can find me at Radio Barry Long on Twitter. I'm on Facebook at Barry Long _II, and I am on Instagram at Barry Long _2. This has been another edition of Go Long Live. We thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.